Everything around you has an explanation. The chair beneath you came from wood, metal, plastic, hands, machines, and design. Your phone came from a factory, from engineers, from minerals pulled out of the ground, from ideas that once existed only inside someone's mind. A tree came from a seed. A seed came from another tree. A cloud came from water rising into the sky. A star came from gas collapsing under gravity. And if you keep asking why something is there, you can usually find another thing behind it, another cause, another condition, another explanation. But then, if you keep going far enough, the question starts to change, because you are no longer asking why this chair exists, or why this planet exists, or why this star exists. You are asking why anything exists at all, and that is where the universe begins to feel strange. Because the universe seems to contain every physical thing we know, every planet, every atom, every galaxy, every law of nature, every moment of time we can measure. So when we ask, what explains the universe? We are not asking an ordinary question anymore. We are asking what explains the whole system. And that is a problem, because everything we normally use to explain things is already inside the universe. If you ask why a glass broke, you can point to the floor, the fall, gravity, impact, and the weakness of the glass. But gravity is inside the universe. The floor is inside the universe. The glass is inside the universe. The person who dropped it is inside the universe. Every ordinary explanation is one part of the universe explaining another part of the universe. And most of the time that works. Science is extremely powerful at explaining things inside the system. It can tell us how stars form, how planets move, how light travels, how life changes over time, how atoms behave, how the early universe expanded from an incredibly hot, dense state. But notice what all of those explanations have in common. They explain one state of the universe by referring to another state of the universe. They explain one event by using other events, forces, laws, and conditions. They explain what happens inside reality. But the deeper question is not just what happened inside reality. The deeper question is why there is reality at all. Imagine a book. Inside the book, every chapter explains the next chapter. Chapter 2 makes sense because of Chapter 1. Chapter 3 makes sense because of Chapter 2. By the end, every event in the story connects beautifully. But if you ask, why does the book exist? You cannot answer that question by pointing to Chapter 1. Because Chapter 1 is also inside the book. The question is not about what happened in the story. The question is about why there is a book at all. The universe has a similar problem. Even if we discovered a perfect scientific explanation for every event inside the universe, we would still be left with one final question. Why does this whole thing exist? Why is there a universe with laws, energy, matter, space, and time? Why is there something instead of nothing? Some people try to answer this by saying the universe caused itself. But that creates a strange problem. For something to cause itself, it seems like it would have to exist before it existed. It would have to be there in order to bring itself into being. But if it was already there, then it did not need to cause itself. And if it was not there, then it could not cause anything. That is why self-causation feels impossible. A thing cannot pull itself out of nothing because before it exists there is no thing to do the pulling. So maybe the universe did not cause itself. Maybe the universe has always existed. Maybe there was never a beginning. Maybe reality stretches backward forever with no first moment. At first, that sounds like it solves the problem. If the universe never began, maybe it never needed a cause. But even then the question does not disappear. Because always existing is not the same as explaining itself. Imagine an endless chain hanging in empty space. Every link is held up by the link before it, and that link is held up by another link, and that one by another. The chain goes back forever, but even if the chain has no first link, you can still ask a question. Why is the whole chain hanging there at all? Saying that every link is supported by another link does not explain why the entire chain exists. It only pushes the explanation back one link at a time. That is the problem with trying to explain the whole universe only by using things inside the universe. You may explain each part, but the whole thing still stands there, asking to be explained. This is where one of the oldest ideas in philosophy appears. Maybe not everything can be explained by something else. Maybe, if anything exists at all, there must be something that does not borrow its existence from another thing, something that does not depend on earlier conditions, something that does not need to be caused, something that simply must exist. Philosophers often call this a necessary reality. A necessary reality would not be just another object floating somewhere in space. It would not be one more planet, one more star, or one more force inside the universe, because then it would still be part of the system needing explanation. Instead, it would be the reason there is a system at all, the ground beneath everything else, the explanation that does not require another explanation behind it. This idea can feel difficult because everything in our experience seems dependent. People depend on parents, plants depend on sunlight, buildings depend on builders, planets depend on gravity, stars depend on matter and pressure. Everything we touch seems fragile, temporary, and borrowed. Nothing around us looks like it had to exist. The universe itself also seems like it could have been different. The laws could have been different. The constants could have been different. The amount of matter could have been different. There might have been no stars, no planets, no life, no minds wondering about any of this. So if the universe could have failed to exist, then perhaps it cannot be the final explanation. Maybe it points beyond itself, but not everyone agrees. Some say the universe is simply a brute fact. It exists, and that is all. There is no deeper explanation, no final reason, no answer underneath the answer. At some point, they say, questioning has to stop. Maybe the universe is where it stops, and that is an honest position, because none of us can step outside the universe, look at it from the outside, and inspect its source like a machine on a table. We are inside the thing we are trying to explain. We are small pieces of the universe asking why the universe is here. That alone should make us humble. But there is something strange about stopping at the universe, because the universe does not feel like the kind of thing that explains itself. It changes, it expands, it contains parts, it has conditions, it has a history. It seems to be the kind of thing that could have been otherwise. And when something could have been otherwise, the mind naturally asks why it is this way and not another way. Why this universe? Why these laws? Why existence at all? The question does not go away just because it becomes difficult. In fact, the difficulty may be the point, because maybe the universe is not the kind of thing that can answer the final question from within itself. A painting cannot explain why there is a canvas. A story cannot explain why there is an author. A shadow cannot explain why there is light. And maybe the universe cannot fully explain why there is a universe. It can explain stars. It can explain storms. It can explain the chemistry of life. It can explain how your body breathes, how your brain dreams, and how your eyes see the night sky. But when it tries to explain why the whole of reality exists, it seems to reach the edge of itself. And at that edge, different people give different names to what might be beyond it. Some call it a necessary being. Some call it the foundation of reality. Some call it the first cause. Some call it pure existence. Some call it God. But the argument does not force everyone to take that final step. It does something quieter. It shows that the universe may not be able to carry the full weight of its own explanation. It shows that explaining everything inside the room is not the same as explaining why there is a room. And once you see that, the question becomes hard to unsee. Maybe the universe is all there is. Maybe existence is just a fact with no deeper reason. Or maybe the reason the universe cannot explain itself is because the answer was never inside the universe to begin with. Maybe everything we see is not the final explanation. Maybe it is the sign pointing toward one. And maybe that is why, when human beings look up at the stars, we do not only ask how they burn. We ask why there is a sky for them to burn in, why there is a mind to see them, why there is something instead of nothing. The universe is full of answers, but perhaps its deepest question is the one it cannot answer alone.